There is this very specific, razor-sharp kind of terror that exists in the human experience.
Hmm.
It isn't spiders, and it's not, the standard fear of heights or flying. It's that precise, heart-stopping moment when a microphone is shoved into your hand.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The room goes completely silent, every single eye is on you, and the stakes are, well, quite literally life and death, or the summary of a life and death.
You're talking about the eulogy.
I am. It is, I would argue, the single most high-pressure public speaking gig a person will ever face.
Hmm.
And just think about the context for a second.
Right.
It's not like a work presentation where you're just, a bit tired, you're grieving, you're exhausted down to your bones, your brain is in a total fog, and yet you are terrified of saying the wrong thing.
Or forgetting something, or just
Or break-
breaking down.
Exactly, just completely falling apart and sobbing in front of everyone.
It's an incredibly heavy weight. It feels like a final exam on someone you loved, and there are absolutely no do-overs. You get one shot.
One shot to get it right.
But it's also such a profound honor. And what's fascinating, and what the source material we're looking at today really gets into, is that while we see it as a performance we have to survive, it's framed very differently.
Right. So today, we're doing a deep dive into this really comprehensive guide. It's called 10 Essential Tips for Writing a Eulogy by Oliver Remington.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission here is pretty simple, but vital. We want to help you move from that state of absolute panic, staring at a blank cursor and feeling sick, to creating a tribute that actually feels like the person you lost.
And that transformation, it starts with a pretty major shift in how you think about it. Remington argues that we need to stop thinking of a eulogy as a speech, where you're being graded.
On your vocabulary or something.
Exactly. Instead, he frames it as a bridge between the past and the present.
I really paused on that image when I read it, a bridge. It changes the whole dynamic.
It's powerful, isn't it? The idea is that the speech serves a real purpose for the mourners. It helps them process the loss, but at the same time, it helps them cherish the life that was lived.
So it's connecting the person who is gone to the people who are still here.
Right. But here's the part I think we often miss. Remington suggests that the act of writing it, the process itself, brings unexpected healing to the writer, too.
Which feels so counterintuitive when you're in it. Writing just feels like another burden.
It feels like work, absolutely, like homework you never asked for. But the process forces you to turn that raw, shapeless sorrow into a story.
Into a narrative.
You're turning grief into a tapestry of gratitude. It organizes the chaos in your head. It gives you a place to put all those feelings.
So if you're listening and you're in that position right now, maybe the service is in 3 days and you're panicking, the core theme we're going to explore is that this doesn't need to be flawless.
Not at all.
You're not writing a biography for a historian. You're not writing a Wikipedia entry. It just needs to be true.
Precisely. True to the person and true to your voice.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics, the actual how-to, because the first hurdle is usually just starting.
Right.
You sit down, open the laptop, and you feel like you have to sum up an entire human existence by yourself.
And that is actually the first big mistake people make. Remington calls it the lone wolf approach.
A lone wolf.
We have this tendency to think, I knew them best, so I have to write this entirely from my own perspective. Or if I ask for help, it's cheating.
Right, or it means I didn't know them well enough on my own.
Exactly. But Remington argues that relying only on your own memories creates this really narrow view. It's like looking at a statue from only one angle. You miss the depth.
That makes so much sense. You only saw that person through your specific lens, as a son or a sister or a friend. You didn't see them as a boss or a teammate.
Exactly. You might inadvertently miss a huge part of their life. Maybe they were a completely different person at work. Maybe they were the office comedian, but at home they were quiet and serious.
And if you miss those sides, you can actually alienate some of the people in the room who knew that version of them. They're sitting there thinking, that's not the person I knew.
Which brings us right to the first essential tip. Gather memories from multiple sources.
This is such a smart, practical tip. It's basically crowdsourcing their legacy. But how do you do that without it becoming this logistical nightmare? You can't be interviewing 50 people while you're also trying to plan a funeral.
No, absolutely not. The author suggests keeping it low friction. Just reach out through calls or emails or even a group chat. You're not asking them to write it for you.
You're just asking for inputs.
Yeah. Simple questions like, what's one story that just sums him up for you? The goal is to build a well-rounded portrait.
The article had a really great example of this with a granddaughter writing a eulogy for her grandmother.
Yes, this was a perfect example of it. So the client was eulogizing her grandmother, and from her perspective, the grandmother was this very domestic figure, a warm, home-based presence. So when she asked her cousins, they talked about her legendary baking skills.
Very family-centric memories, the smell of the kitchen, you know, flour on the apron.
Absolutely. Beautiful, valid memories, but it's only half the story.
Right.
Because then she reached out to the neighbors, she stepped outside that family bubble, and the neighbors chimed in with all these stories about her community garden efforts. They saw her as an organizer, a leader.
Someone out in the dirt connecting with the whole neighborhood.
And when you put those two things together, you get something so much richer.
Yeah.
You weave them into a narrative. Suddenly, she isn't just a grandma who bakes cookies. She's a nurturer of both people and plants. She fed her family, and she beautified her community. That resonates with everyone.
It makes the person three-dimensional. Okay, so you've done your crowdsourcing. You've got sticky notes, text messages, emails, a giant pile of information. The next nightmare is organizing it. I feel like the tendency is just to ramble. You have so much you want to say, and you're afraid of leaving anything out.
And that's the trap. Jumping randomly between topics is just confusing for the listeners. And we have to remember, and Remington makes this a crucial point, the audience is already emotional. Their cognitive load is maxed out.
They're grieving. They're tired.
They can't follow some non-linear avant-garde narrative. They need you to guide them.
So structure isn't just about being neat. It's an act of kindness to the audience.
It really is. Tip number 2 is to structure the speech logically. The author suggests a classic blueprint, a clear beginning, middle, and end.
It sounds so basic, like high school English class, but in the heat of the moment, we forget the basics.
We do. We try to be clever. Don't be clever. Be clear. Introduce the person, share those key stories, and then conclude with their legacy. There was a great example of a man eulogizing his father that really nailed this life journey approach.
Right. He didn't just bounce around from he liked fishing to he was a baby to he retired.
No. He treated it like a timeline. He started with childhood adventures, the origin story. Then he moved to career achievements, the middle years. And he ended with the lessons on kindness his father taught him in his later years.
It creates a cohesive story. It takes the audience by the hand and walks them through a life instead of just throwing a bucket of disjointed memories at them.
Precisely. It turns a list of facts into a narrative flow. And that flow is what helps people release their emotion in a healthy way. They feel like they've been on a journey with you.
Okay, so we have our research. We have our structure, our handrail to hold on to. Now we need to talk about the actual content, the words. Because I think we have all been to services where the speeches just felt, well, generic.
They were a nice person trap.
Exactly. They were kind, they were generous, they loved their family. It's not that those things aren't true. I'm sure they are. It's just they could apply to almost anyone. It feels like a horoscope.
It lacks teeth. It lacks specificity. This is where tip number 4 comes in. And I think this might be the most important tip of all for making the speech memorable. Personalize it with unique details.
The author talks about focusing on specific quirks and habits instead of generalizations, that old show, don't tell rule.
Specificity creates intimacy. Generalizations create distance. The source gives this beautiful example of a eulogy for a mother. Now, the speaker could have just said, "My mother loved nature."
Which is fine, but boring. Totally forgettable.
Instead, the speaker focused on her bird watching. But not just that she watched birds. The detail was that she named every single bird that came into the yard.
That is such a great detail. It immediately makes you smile.
It does. And think about what that one specific quirk tells you. It symbolizes her nurturing nature, her patience, her humor, her incredible attention to detail. It paints a picture. If you say, "She was kind," I nod politely. If you tell me she named the sparrows Bob and Linda and created backstories for them, I see her.
I feel like I know her.
That is the difference between a resume and a tribute. A resume lists attributes. A tribute lists evidence.
Yeah, you have to trust that those small details will land. You don't need these grand, sweeping gestures. The way they took their coffee, the catchphrase they always use.
The weird way they organized their bookshelf. Those are the things people miss.
Okay, now here's a tricky one. Tone. It's a funeral. It is inherently sad. The default setting is somber. But does it have to be 100% sad?
This is a delicate balance, but it's a crucial one. Tip number 3 is balance, emotion, and humor.
Humor at a funeral. That feels so risky. People worry it's disrespectful.
It feels risky, but it's so necessary. The goal is to honor the full spectrum of their life. I mean, people are rarely just one-dimensional figures of sorrow. They laughed, they told bad jokes.
Relief is a good word for it. It's like letting the steam out of a pressure cooker. The audience needs a moment to breathe.
They do. If you keep the tension at 100% for the whole speech, it's exhausting. But the rule is the humor has to fit the personality. You're not doing a stand-up set.
Right.
There was a story in the text about a eulogy for a witty uncle.
Oh, I remember this one. This was such a great pivot.
The speaker started with a really tearful memory of the uncle's support, so he grounded the speech in real emotion, but then he pivoted. He told a funny story about the uncle's disastrous cooking attempts.
Which I'm sure got a laugh, because everyone in that room probably ate that bad food at some point.
Oh.
It's a shared trauma, but in a funny way.
Exactly. It brought smiles amid the grief. And that is the sweet spot. You aren't mocking the dead. You are celebrating their humanity. It reminds everyone he was a real person, not a saint.
But the article does give a warning here. Don't force it.
Correct. Forced or insensitive jokes are just awkward. If the person wasn't a jokester or if the circumstances are especially tragic, you have to read the room. But usually, reflecting that lighter side is a gift. It gives the audience permission to smile.
Okay, so sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just can't find the right words. The emotion is just too big for your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
You're staring at the screen, and everything you write feels inadequate, like you're failing them.
It's a very common feeling. We aren't all poets, you know. And that brings us to tip number 7. Incorporate quotes or stories. The idea here is to lean on literature, songs, or even the deceased's own words to do the heavy lifting.
It's like borrowing a little bit of eloquence when your own well has run dry.
Exactly. It adds depth. The example given was for a grandfather who was a massive book lover. The speaker couldn't quite articulate the depth of this man's love for his family, so he didn't try to invent it. He used a quote from the grandfather's favorite novel about enduring love.
And then paired it with a personal story.
Yes, he paired that high-level literary quote with a really grounded story about the grandfather reading bedtime tales to him as a kid. It blended inspiration with nostalgia, so if you're stuck, look at what they read, what they listened to.
Their favorite song lyrics might say it better than you ever could.
And it honors their taste, too.
I want to touch on something else the article mentions, which is cultural context. You might have a service where half the room is secular and the other half is deeply religious, or they come from totally different backgrounds.
This is tip number 8. Respect cultural or religious elements. This is all about fostering unity. A funeral is often the only time these diverse parts of a family are all in one room.
The eulogy can be a place to weave those threads together.
Or it can be a place where people feel excluded. The source had this really touching example of a multicultural service. It described a service that blended Christian prayers with indigenous storytelling. By doing that, the speaker honored the deceased's blended roots. It made sure everyone in the room felt their connection to the person was seen and respected.
It's about not erasing any part of who they were just to fit a certain mold.
Exactly. Ignoring those things can alienate people. Including them provides comfort. It says, we see all of you, we see where you came from and who you became.
Okay, so we've built the speech, we have our structure, our bird naming details, maybe a quote. Now we have to talk logistics, the practical stuff.
The nuts and bolts, the unsexy stuff that actually saves you.
The burning question everyone has but is afraid to ask is, how long should this thing be? Because we have all been hostage to the speech that never ends. The speaker's just rambling on, people are shifting in their seats.
We've all been there. It's painful.
Yeah.
And the author is very clear on this in tip number 6. Handle length wisely. The target is 3 to 5 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes. That sounds incredibly short. I mean, I'm summarizing life. How can I do that in 180 seconds? It feels disrespectful.
It feels short, I know. But let's look at the math. The average person speaks at about 130 to 150 words per minute. So 5 minutes is roughly 750 words. That's a lot of text.
Okay.
And there's a good reason for this less is more rule. You have to respect the schedule of the service, but more importantly, you have to respect the audience's attention span.
Grief is physically exhausting. I don't think people realize that.
It is. It's draining. Your brain is running on fumes. People can't focus for 20 minutes. The source contrasts a 10-minute speech that caused restlessness with a concise 4-minute speech that left a much stronger impression. Brevity forces you to prioritize.
It forces you to get to the good stuff.
If you try to include everything, you just dilute the impact.
So 500 to 800 words. That means you probably need to edit. You can't just go with your stream of consciousness.
Which leads us to tip number 9, edit for clarity and flow.
The first draft is rarely the final draft.
The first draft should never be the final draft. The first draft is an emotional brain dump. It's you crying onto the keyboard, and that's valuable. That's the raw material. But it's not a speech.
Right.
You need to go back and remove redundancies, fix run-on sentences.
Run-on sentences are a big one when we're emotional. We just keep connecting ideas with, and then.
Exactly. And when you're speaking, they're deadly because you run out of breath. You need to edit for clarity.
It's so hard to cut things, though. It feels like you're deleting pieces of them.
It is, but clarity is a kindness. You want the message to land. You want people to walk away remembering the person, not the confusion of the speech.
And part of that editing process is getting a second pair of eyes, right?
Yeah.
You can't be objective.
Tip number 10, seek feedback. Share your draft with someone you trust.
And it's not just for grammar, is it?
No, it's for blind spots. You are too close to it. The source shares a story of a widow who showed her draft to friends. She thought it was finished, but her friends suggested adding a story about her husband's generosity.
Something she had missed.
Something she'd taken for granted because she saw it every day. To her, it was just normal life. To them, it was extraordinary.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And adding that story didn't just make the speech better, it made her feel more supported. It enriched the whole thing. Don't isolate yourself. This goes right back to that lone wolf mistake.
Okay, so you've written it, edited it, check the timing. Now comes the final boss battle, the delivery. Standing up there and actually speaking the words.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Tip number 5 is non-negotiable. Practice delivery multiple times.
I feel like people resist this. They think practicing feels artificial. Like, shouldn't it just flow from the heart? Does practicing make it less sincere?
That's a romantic idea, but in reality, nerves and emotion will absolutely choke you up if you aren't prepared. Your throat tightens, your hands shake, you lose your place, you start crying, and you can't stop. The author suggests practicing aloud, in front of a mirror or a friend.
It's about muscle memory.
It is. You need to get comfortable with the pauses. You need to know where the emotional landmines are. You might find there is one specific sentence, maybe the one about the bird watching, that makes you cry every time. If you know that, you can prepare for it. Take a breath before you say it.
The text had that really encouraging example of a son preparing his mother's eulogy.
Yes. He was incredibly nervous. It says he practiced daily for a week. He started out so shaky, couldn't get through it without sobbing. But by the time the service came, he delivered the speech with a steady voice.
He didn't break down.
He conveyed his love without breaking down completely. He might have teared up, but he kept going. And that's the key practice, turns panic into poise. It allows you to actually be present in the moment because you aren't scrambling for the next word.
You've built a safety net for yourself.
That's it. Exactly.
I think that's the biggest takeaway for me on the logistics side. Practice isn't about being robotic. It's about giving yourself the stability to get through it.
You owe it to yourself and to them to be heard.
So, looking back at these 10 tips, it really is a roadmap. It takes this terrifying, huge task and just breaks it down.
It removes the mystery.
Let's recap the big ones. First, don't go it alone. Crowdsource those stories.
Second, be specific. Remember the bird watching. Details create connection.
Third, keep it tight under 5 minutes. Respect the room.
And finally, practice until you're steady. Don't wing it.
It sounds so doable when you put it that way.
It is doable. And I think the final encouragement from the expert, from Oliver Remington, is really important here. He reminds you that you have the strength to do this. The goal isn't a performance. The goal is authenticity, preparation, and heart.
If you have those 3, you can't fail.
Can't.
And for anyone who wants to dig even deeper, the article suggests some great resources. The Art of the Eulogy by Margaret Shepard, and On Grief and Grieving by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. Classics.
And also a mention of the A Life Portrait website for creating online memorials, which is another great way to keep those memories alive.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. We started by saying that a eulogy is a bridge between the past and the present. We often think of it as the final goodbye, the period at the end of the sentence.
But if we look at what we've discussed today, the gathering of memories, discovering new sides of a person, weaving together a whole life story.
Exactly. Perhaps the most important part of writing a eulogy isn't just about saying goodbye to who they were. It's about discovering how their story changes your story moving forward. Because when you really look at a life that closely, when you see the bird watching and the community garden and the bad cooking, you can't help but be changed by it.
That's a beautiful thought. It's not just a closing, it's a continuation.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We hope it helps you find the words when you need them most.
Take care.